Warning, feelings may get hurt in this video. If your feelings get hurt really easily, stop watching the video right now. The views expressed in this video today are based upon facts, personal experiences, as well as opinions. So let's go ahead and get into it. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode, and today we're going to talk about the infamous battle between the Duramax and the Cummins. Stay tuned. When choosing a diesel truck, you guys want to go through every single option possible to make sure that you make the best educated decision for what you guys want to do, especially because these trucks are not cheap. So in today's video, we're going to talk about Duramax versus Cummins. I'm excited, but we're going to go ahead and explain real true information. You guys know me pretty well on YouTube. I do a lot of installations on Duramax diesel engines. Yes, I've definitely done a few, probably about a dozen YouTube videos on the Cummins. We built some pretty incredible trucks on the channel. Now, being in the truck community, the diesel scene, if you will, for many years, I've definitely been around a lot of guys that own both platforms. And I've learned a lot on both sides of the fence. And me personally, I'm a Chevy guy. I like the Silverados, the GMCs. I like the GM trucks. That's just my opinion. But I'm going to put my bias and my opinions to the side right now. In this video, I'm going to give you guys facts. Now, of course, in this video, we will talk about facts. But at the end of the video, I'm going to give you guys my own personal experiences with these vehicles. And not only that, my opinion, what I would personally choose. And then, of course, what is superior, what's better than the other. So two of the top names in the diesel truck industry is Duramax and Cummins. Of course, we don't want to leave the Power Stroke guys out of the loop. As a matter of fact, I think that the 6.7 liter Power Stroke is a very, very good engine. One thing that I respect about the 6.7 liter Power Stroke is the simple fact that they engineered and designed their own diesel engine and they put it in their own truck. Two of the top names in the American diesel truck industry are Duramax and Cummins. You'll find Duramax diesel engines across the entire General Motors line. And then you got Cummins. Cummins diesel engines are primarily in the Ram truck line, which is owned by Fiat Chrysler. But you'll also find them in the Nissan Titan line of trucks. One engine is not necessarily better than the other. Duramax and Cummins engines have different similarities. Let's take a look at what makes them tick. So let's talk about the history on both engines really quickly. I think this is very important. So the Cummins engine has over 100 years of history. The engine got its start back in 1919. Chrysler Corporation began putting Cummins engines in Ram trucks in 1989. On the other hand, GM's Duramax got started barely 20 years ago in 2001 when they first introduced it. The first generation Duramax, which is commonly known as the LB7. If you're looking for a diesel engine with a long history, then Cummins fits the bill 100%. The first Cummins diesel in Ram trucks was the 5.9 liter 6-cylinder turbo diesel that put out 400 foot-pounds of torque. Even though both Ford and Chevy had diesel engines at this time, the Cummins diesel revolutionized the market by offering a turbocharger, direct injection, and 400 foot-pounds of torque, things Ford and Chevy never offered. 2007, that's when they actually switched over from the 5.9 liter to the 6.7 liter. Now, although the 6.7 liter Cummins parts are very similar to the 5.9 liter parts, the 6.7 liter, when it was introduced, had to change a lot for the emission standards. It offered as much as 650 foot-pounds of torque while also being 50% quieter. Now, that's just some of the facts of the Cummins, and to be honest with you, I personally don't care if the diesel is quiet because it's a diesel, but some people actually do, and that's important. Now let's talk a little bit about the Duramax platform. The Duramax engine got started with a partnership between General Motors and Isuzu. The first generation of Duramax came out in 2001 and offered 520 foot-pounds of torque. Parts included a high-pressure common rail Bosch CP3 injection pump, which is something that the Cummins engine didn't start until 2003. Duramax has seen several updates since the beginning of time in 01 when the LB7 was released. Duramax LOI, which is basically your second generation diesel after the LB7, and then, of course, your LBZs, your 06 and 07, which would be your third generation diesel. And then, of course, your Duramax LMM. It came out in mid-2007, so 07.5. And then your LML came out in 2011. And then that version lasted until 2016 when the Duramax L5P was released, and that's what we have currently out on the market for the newer platform diesel. But let's be honest, it's not always about horsepower. Let's talk about torque with these diesel engines, because that is probably one of the most important things. I mean, many people buy diesel trucks to tow heavy items like boats, horses, trailers, campers like the one that I just purchased, and heavy equipment. Diesel engines have the ability to produce torque on a much higher level than gasoline engines. How much torque produced by Duramax or Cummins diesel engines varies greatly from engine to engine and truck to truck. Like we just talked about the different series of Duramax, the LB7, the LOY, and a lot of this stuff probably doesn't make a lot of sense to you. But the generations changed from 2001 all the way up to 2020. But the engineers wanted to make these diesel platforms better and better as every generation goes by, with producing torque and horsepower, as well as keeping up with all the emission standards enforced by the EPA. When talking about torque, for example, a 2018 GMC Sierra HD with a Duramax 6.6 liter diesel produces 910 foot-pounds of torque. The Nissan Titan XD with a Cummins 5.0 liter diesel makes 555 foot-pounds of torque, and then the Cummins 6.7 liter diesel in a 2018 heavy-duty Ram makes 930 foot-pounds. Between 2001 and 2004, the Duramax 6.6 liter LB7 produced a leading 520 foot-pounds of torque. By the mid-2007s, the 5.9 liter Cummins output a total of 610 foot-pounds of torque, while the Duramax 6.6 liter, the LMM version, which was your mid-2007, put out 650 foot-pounds of torque. Since then, both engines have maintained similar specifications. Let's get into some of the fun stuff. Horsepower. Horsepower isn't far behind. More horsepower means faster acceleration, whether you are towing or not. The current Duramax 6.6 liter, the newest version, the L5P diesel, wins this category with the highest horsepower, which is 445 horsepower. The current 6.7 liter 24 valve Ram Cummins diesel engine produces 400 horsepower. Historically, horsepower has swayed slightly in favor of the Duramax versus the Cummins line. So let's talk about Cummins versus Duramax specs. Current Cummins engine is a 6.7 liter inline. It's an inline motor, while the Duramax is a 6.6 liter V8 engine. The Duramax leads with horsepower like we talked about, but the Cummins is the king of torque with numbers up to 1,000 foot-pounds. Let's talk about displacement really quick. Obviously, the 6.7 liter isn't too far off from a 6.6 liter, so they're very similar in size. But both motors are engineered completely different, like we talked about the inline 6 and then the V8. And the firing order would be different with the 1.536 with the 6.7 liter, and then with the 6.6 liter, you have the 1.27, 8, 4, 5, 6, and then 3. And the cylinder heads on a Cummins is a cast iron, and then the Duramax, the new L5P, is an aluminum cylinder head. Let's talk about the pros and cons really quick on both sides of the fence, and then we'll go ahead and get into the verdict. So we can talk about the 2020 versus the 2020. There's a lot of write-ups, a lot of YouTube videos on that one. I want to hit on some of the generations that we just talked about, from the LB7 to the L5P, and of course the 5.9 to the 6.7 liter Cummins. The first generation Duramax diesel, we know that it's very common for the LB7 injectors to fail. It's because of the operating tolerances inside the fuel system. They're so tight. Proper lubrication from the diesel fuel is critical. There is even the slightest bit of air or fuel, or worse, contaminants or dirt or even rust that gets into those injection lines, it's going to cause injector failure. You can bet that the injectors, the entire fuel system in those LB7s, will wear very badly over time. But of course, nowadays, the cure for that is to get better injectors, get a lift pump. Those LB7s are awesome, but we're talking about the cons right now, so I won't get into that, I'm sorry. In terms of the LOI injector problems, GM had sorted that stuff out. Of course, in the first generation LB7 version, they buried the injectors inside of the valve covers, so it took a very long time. Sometimes it'll take you up to 13 hours to replace all 8 diesel injectors, but now it's a lot easier because when the LOI was introduced, you're now able to remove the injectors from outside of the motors. One of the biggest complaints on the LOI, which would be your 04 engines, is the tendency of overheating, especially when the truck is being worked really hard with heavier trailers on hot summer days. Generally, the LOI mouthpiece going right to the turbo, that inlet that's connected to it, is generally a lot smaller. The LBZ is often regarded as the greatest Duramax diesel of all times for a few reasons. It was first to come bolted to a 6-speed Allison transmission, which is legendary, which provides a lower cruising RPM and greater fuel efficiency when compared to the 5-speed, which was put in the first 2 generations of Duramaxes. And then when talking about the LMM, I usually categorize it very similar to the LBZ. The biggest complaint on both platforms is the fact that the LBZ and the LMM, the piston heads crack. It's a very flawed design, but there's a lot of other ways to correct that. If you're a Duramax guy like myself, we can talk all day about the LML, one of my favorite diesel engines, one of them. I like them all. But the LML has the infamous CP4, your fuel injection pump. A lot of guys actually switch those out from the older generations, your CP3s, and they put them in the new LML version, Duramax engines. But basically, those things, when they go, they go. They send shards of metal all through your injection system. I mean, it is a mess. If it's ever happened to you, leave it in the comments below, but what I'm trying to say is you're going to have to replace all of that stuff. That means you're going to end up replacing all new diesel injector lines, as well as even injectors, and then of course your CP4 pump. It's extremely expensive, but there's all kinds of other alternatives with the LML to make it even better. So if you guys can nip that in the butt before it explodes, definitely look into a CP3 conversion on an LML. It's probably your best bet, but that's one of the biggest complaints with that version diesel. The L5P is the best post-emissions Duramax. All the problems associated with the emission systems, and of course the injection pumps, have been taken care of in this newer platform. Mechanically, the L5P is a stout motor, and very few major problems have been reported. One common problem is the map sensor, as it tends to clog with soot and throw a check engine light. So now that we've talked about the Duramax, let's talk about some of the issues with the Cummins platform. So your biggest issues with the first generation, second generation diesels, so your 98s to your 02s, is the KDP, or the killer dowel pin. Problem, due to its ability to completely trash an engine, the killer dowel pin tops our list of Cummins shortcomings on the assembly line. A tiny steel dowel pin was pressed into the block in order to locate the engine's timing gear housing, and then over time, and thanks to a combination of vibration, heat cycles, and age, it can work its way out of the block. Then once it falls out, a tiny dowel pin usually makes contact with the cam gear first, effectively making this little tiny dowel pin that just broke off a wrecking ball. If you bought your 89 to your 02 Ram used, there is no concrete way to know if that dowel pin has been addressed. And then of course you have your number 53 engine block. Now this is the 24 valve engine. Basically what happened during this time is they produced over 100,000 of these engine blocks. Due to the thinner water jackets that we're talking about, it's very prone to cracking, and people have actually seen coolant leaking right out of the side of their engine block. So that number 53 is a huge issue. So many 53 block owners dabble in the temporary fixes, the process of stitching the block together. It's basically been the preferred method of repairing or even fixing a cracked block. Really, that's your only solution for that right there. And then let's talk about the head gasket issues with these Cummins. The longer stroke and a quick variable geometry turbocharger on the 6.7 liter Cummins produces low RPM cylinder pressure, i.e. torque, than its earlier generation, which is the 5.9 liter Cummins. While this is ideal for what most Ram owners use their trucks for, towing or even hauling, it can take its toll on the 6.7 liter head gaskets. 6.7 head gaskets also makes use of less sealing area between the cylinders and water jackets, thanks to incorporating a larger bore as compared to the 5.9 liter. Now add all of that together and then of course throw a programmer into the mix. Most truck owners can't resist having an extra 80 to 150 horsepower on tap, let's be honest. And you start to see why head gasket failure is so common with the 07.5 and present Ram trucks. But of course the biggest fix to that is ARP head studs. Set it and forget it, you'll be good to go. And then let's go ahead and move on to the infamous issues with the VP44. Perhaps the most notorious Cummins failure on the books is when a VP44 bites the dust. Electronically controlled rotary style Bosch injection pump was used on all 1998.5 to 02 Cummins and relied solely on diesel fuel as its means of cooling and lubricating, versus the P pump found on 94 to 98 5.9 liters, which had its own oil supply. Once a VP44 has been denied adequate fuel supply pressure for any prolonged period of time, VP44, they're not cheap. I mean, you're talking $1,000 right there. But the fix to that one is a lift pump, an Air Dog, or even a FASS. Lift pumps are going to introduce pure diesel fuel to your engine. You were talking it's going to separate the water, the dirt, the air from the fuel, and it's just really going to deliver really good fuel to your injection system. And then common rail injection failure. This isn't really a big issue. It is disappointing for Cummins owners that transition from an older mechanical engine to a newer common rail model. So basically your 03 to present, your 2003s until now. Instead of actually having to worry about a failed injector, many owners are shelling out $2,000 to $3,000 every 140,000 miles for new injectors. The injectors can see higher pressures than ever before. We're talking 26,000 PSI. With these injectors, the fuel system debris has been known to lead to injector sticking in the on position, in which case the piston below can eventually melt. What's the fix to this one right here? We talked about it already, a lift pump. I recommend a lift pump on every single diesel. whether or not you got a Power Stroke, Duramax, or Cummins. With all that information set aside, which is better? Well, like I said, it really depends on the individual. All the research that I've done, I've came to the conclusion that the 2020 error, the 2020 versus battle between that and the Duramax, the Cummins has it on overall torque, not on horsepower, but it still leads the pack for towing capability. But what's really won me over would be the simplicity of the inline-six Cummins diesel engine. I mean, how much easier is it to work on that than a Duramax? Not only that, you can put more power to the ground with that engine in itself, but I still have to stick with the Chevy because the Silverado platform, in my opinion, is better than the Dodge platform. The reliability and durability packed by a 6-speed Allison transmission, and with the L5Ps, the 10-speed transmission, it makes an unstoppable unit. But the Cummins engine remains superior over the many years, tried and true. But then again, we're talking about a Cummins engine that has been produced for over 100 years. Especially when it comes to torque. Dodge Ram with a Cummins powered diesel engine in it is going to outperform a Chevy Silverado when it comes to towing, and then of course higher horsepower depending on how deep your pockets go. Now, even though the Cummins 6.7 liter is more superior than the Duramax in the 2020 platform, I have to say that I prefer the LBZ, which is your 06 Duramax, and your 06 5.9 Cummins. I actually really like both of them, and a lot of you guys probably know that from watching my videos. If I had to choose between the two and I had a Ram or a Silverado or GMC in the same exact year, 06, I would definitely go with the 2006 Silverado. And I personally like the 4 doors, the 6.5 foot box. And with the Cummins and 4 doors, the interior, everything about it, it's just super small and cramped in there. And on top of that, it does not have an Allison transmission. Stock rating horsepower on a 2006 5.9 liter Cummins comes in at a whopping 325 horsepower. And then on top of that, you're looking at 610 foot-pounds of torque, which is pretty awesome. But the 2006 Chevrolet Silverado with the Duramax engine has a peak horsepower of 360 horsepower and a peak torque of 650 foot-pounds of torque. My personal preference on this one, if I wanted to get the biggest bang for my buck, and if I really prefer the 06 Dodge Ram versus the Silverado, I'm going to pick the Silverado because it has more horsepower, more torque, the biggest bang for my buck. But that 2006 5.9 liter Cummins versus the 6.6 liter LBZ Duramax, it's a fact that both engines are equally reliable. But if I was to say that I had $1 million and I wanted to build a race truck out of one of the two platforms, it would be the Cummins, because it's a fact that the Cummins engine block can hold more horsepower than the actual Duramax in that same year. You guys just have to pick what you think works best for you within your budget and of course what you like. But I think both diesel engines in every generation are equally awesome in their own perspective right. Both trucks has its issues, pros and cons. We've laid all that out here in this video today. If you were to go on the internet right now and look up what are the most reliable diesel engines out there, and we're not talking about the Power Stroke right now, we'll get to that. But the biggest ones is the LB7 engine, the first generation style, and of course the 12-valve 6BT Cummins. Those things are dubbed a million-mile engine. But as long as you guys keep up with the maintenance just like any other piece of equipment, they're going to last you a very long time. And most Chevy owners are very faithful to their brand. I've learned that. I've been in the truck scene for a very long time. They usually don't go away from that. GM trucks are very iconic in its time, and they just look amazing, in my opinion. Maybe not in yours. Some of you guys are Dodge fans, and you guys really like the Dodge Ram look. I think they look really good, but in my particular case, I really like the classic body styles. You guys want to know my opinion on this one, and I'm always going to say Duramax just because I've been working on them for so many years. I also know that they're extremely reliable. With that being said, if I'm going to build a diesel engine for some real power, I'm definitely going to go Cummins. You guys let me know in the comments what you think is a better diesel engine. So do with what you want with all this information that I put out, and I hope this video was very insightful. You guys let me know what you think in the comments below. I want to read it. I want to know what you guys think. Duramax or Cummins? What's a better engine? And of course, what I've experienced with these platforms. Thanks for sticking with me till the very end of this video. You guys are absolutely amazing. And make sure you guys hit that subscribe button on your way out if you guys enjoyed this video. Of course, as always, stay tuned for some more awesome and amazing content on this channel. Thank you so much for your time. Stay tuned.